What's up, everybody? It's that guy Skimpy. Today, I got a good buddy, 253 caster, and man, he's the big bait bassin beast Brent. That's 5 Bs, and this guy's a beast, man, when it comes to these big baits, especially these big swim baits. So, man, I've been talking with him, and I told him, man, I want to get him on here and just chop it up with him and talk about these big swim baits, man. It's something I've always wanted to get into. I've seen a lot of fish, a lot of big fish caught on these. And so, man, I just wanted to ask this man a few questions and see if we can get down to it. Maybe help all of us gain a little bit of confidence in these big swim baits. So, what's up, Brent? How you been, man?
Oh, pretty good, man. You know, just living life and trying to fish when I can and trying to catch the biggest bass as always, man.
Yes, sir. So, as you know, I got a couple questions for you, man, and I appreciate you being on here. So, first of all, go ahead and do an introduction, man. Lay out your social media and all that. How do we find you and all that good stuff?
Okay, well, I guess I'll start with my social media. Most of you on social media will probably know me, if you know me at all, as 253 Caster, but my name is Brent Davis. Born and raised here in the beautiful PNW. And I love bass fishing. I love all fishing, but bass fishing and especially targeting them with swim baits has kind of stole my heart and I'd say the better part of the last decade. So, yeah, I'm excited to be here to talk about it. I've also got a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Brent Davis Fishing. And on there, you'll be able to find a lot of cast to catch footage of me catching some good fish, few reviews of mine, and eventually I'd like to get some tip videos up there and some other fun stuff. So check me out on there. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. So what's up, man?
Right on. All right. So I got a couple questions on my phone. So if you keep on seeing me looking down, it's because I got the questions on my phone. But first of all, I just got to know, man, what is your PB on big swim baits?
We talking PB or we talking ones that got away? Fish stories.
Oh, well, I got to hear about both. So we'll talk about PBs first.
Well, the biggest one I've got in the boat was a 9.36 largemouth, all girth. She was 20 and a half inches long, just freaking stuffed, or 22 and a half. I mean, I'm sorry, just stuffed, man. Yeah, so that's my PB largemouth on swim baits. And
so what's your PB largemouth not on swim baits, on big swim baits?
Not on swim baits. Right at 8 pounds. I caught one on a jig the year before I got into swim baits.
Nice.
And that was the only fish in the 8-pound class I've ever put on a scale. So those 8-pounders are elusive.
Yes, sir. So tell me about this, the magical one that got away, man.
Oh, I've had plenty of those, but nobody wants to hear about that.
Yeah.
But there's been a few. There was one fish in particular I'll talk about. I found her 2 summers ago, and she followed out a glide bait, and I got some real good looks at her, and saw her again that summer in the same general area, and then that was the last time I saw her. Came back the following summer, and she was right in the same exact spot I found her the first time, and I didn't catch her, or I didn't draw any strikes from her that day, but I came back about a week or so later when the conditions were a little bit better, and I hooked a fish in that spot. And I can't tell you how big it was exactly because it got off right at the net, which is one of the downsides to using a net. But I want to say it was that fish, but to be completely honest with you, it looked like it was a little bit smaller. So I just like to tell myself it wasn't that fish.
So if you had a guess, how big was it?
Fish, it was every bit of over 10. It was one of the bigger fish I've ever seen. When you start catching a lot of 6-7 pound fish in the 22-inch range, you know, when you see one that's probably 24 inches, that's probably a fish that's into the double digit class. And I'd say this fish was definitely into the double digit class, but it's okay. I'll be back this year looking for her.
There you go.
Hopefully she's ready to play.
Yeah, I need that picture too, man. I got to see it. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So when you're fishing a big swim bait, how long do you commit to that swim bait, that big swim bait? Because, for example, if I'm flipping jigs and I'm not getting anything, I'm switching to, spinnerbait, or I'm switching to this or that. But it seems like you will stick with this big swim bait like the whole time. Are you switching a different kind of swim bait, or will you put it down like altogether?
Well, there'll be a lot of times where I'll switch different swim baits, but the style of fishing I've committed to over the past several years has been trying to catch them on the bigger stuff. I mean, I've invested a lot of money, a lot of time into it. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can about each technique and just kind of trying to refine that technique and hoping that in that, I find the fish I'm looking for. And I keep telling myself, once I find that fish, I'll let off the gas a little bit and, maybe try to get into some other hobbies. But as I hear, that's not always the case for people.
Right. You just want to keep going bigger and bigger.
Exactly.
So what I meant by like commit to it is you're gonna use that big swim bait all day, no matter what.
Some form of big swim bait, but for example, this might get into a little bit of some other topics we'll touch on later. But so I like to start out. I'll start out generally most of the year. I'll start out with some kind of glide bait, and what that does is it allows me to kind of read the behavior of the fish and determine what kind of mood they're in for that day. If I go out there and I start throwing a glide bait around and they start pouncing on it while I'm just reeling it in, I know it's a good day and I could probably get bit on just about everything. But the glide bait's kind of a double-edged sword, because there'll be a lot of instances while you're fishing that glide bait where you're going to get a lot of followers on that thing, and those followers, they seem like they may be interested, but after doing it for so long, you kind of pick up on these visual cues of these fish's behavior that they give off before they eat or before they don't eat, and it kind of helps you determine if that fish is going to eat in the first place. So basically, if I go along and I start throwing my glide baits for a while and fishes where I know I'm going to see some fish, and I'm seeing these fish and they're following really lazily, a few feet behind or a couple feet down under, they're not really getting excited when I'm trying to trigger them at all. Typically that means you're not going to have a chance at that fish regardless. So in that kind of situation, I would recommend just putting the bait down, coming back in an hour or two when the conditions change, or coming back with a different bait. A lot of times that's probably the better option, is to come back with a bigger bait or a smaller bait, but a different bait, and see if you can either slow down to catch that fish or just present something different in a way that she might want it. So basically, to answer the question is, I will give an hour or two of fishing covers or areas specific to that bait before I determine that bait is not really happening for the day.
Okay. All right. Well, so on an average outing, how many bites would you get on a big swim bait? Because I know there's some people who said, I'd rather catch little ones all day, and there's some people who say, man, I'll fish all day just for one bass.
Right. Well, to those people's surprise, there's going to be days where you go out there throwing an 8-10 inch bait, but you catch a boatload of 1 to 2 pound fish. It happens. There's a lot of days like that, especially as you get into the post spawn and later into the year when those smaller fish start to get more aggressive and there's less and less bait around. So I would say, generally speaking, when you're in the meat and potatoes of the season, the better parts of the season, it's going to be anywhere from 3 bites to 6, 7, 8. But I'm going to put a little asterisk by that and say bites on swim baits are not the same as getting the fish in the boat. You're going to get a lot of bites. You're going to get a lot of followers that don't necessarily fully connect. That's just part of the game. But I would say on an average outing, if I go out for 8 hours, I'm going to have at least 2 or 3 fish come up and peck it or boil on it. And hopefully one of those fish sticks. But
right.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. So what is your setup? And what I mean by setup, I mean rod, reel, your line size and line type. I know that's a long question, but I figure you'll cover it.
Right. Well, that's gonna vary on which specific swim bait technique you're talking about, because you've got big soft swim baits, which are going to be I guess the best way I can explain it is I'll break it down into kind of 3 categories. And you've got your surface lures and your upper water column baits. You've got your middle water column baits, and then you've got your lower water column baits. Okay. Now, these can interchange, but for the most part, you're going to have your hard baits are going to most of the time be a mid to upper water column bait. Your soft baits are going to be a mid to lower water column baits. So it's going to vary because of that. So with a soft bait, you're going to want something that's going to be a little more stout, especially if you're fishing something with a jig hook and it's got an internal harness in it, because you need something to push that single big ass hook all the way through the fish's mouth, right, and to keep them pinned and coming towards you when you're reeling them in, especially if you're reeling them away or out of cover. So something more stout and with a slower gear ratio, preferable for me for soft baits. But I know a lot of guys will throw weedless soft baits and some of the nasty stuff, and they like really high gear ratio, so when they get bit, they can just crank them out really fast. But I like to be able to slow down. For me, soft baits and fishing really slow has always been kind of synonymous. So and then as you get towards your middle water column and your upper water column, they're typically going to be hard baits, and they're going to be treble hook baits. So you kind of use the same rule of thumb with conventional tackle. And when you've got treble hook baits, you're going to want something that's more parabolic, something that bends more down that rod, so it can absorb the fish shaking, and it's not the basics behind all that. So anyway, so your upper water column, middle water column baits, your hard baits, you're going to want something softer. But I would say for your average, 6 to 10 inch baits, you're going to want a rod probably in the 8 foot range to give you some distance, which is really important with fishing these swim baits. Is you want distance. And another really important thing that I'm sure we'll touch on later is your boat positioning. So 7 foot rods to 7.5. Even I've got one that's an 8.6. That's my primary rod that I use most of the time, and they're rated. Ratings are kind of all over the place, right, but they're rated. I think one's rated 20 to 40 pound, but the bait rating on it's like up to 16 ounces. So it's really important. I'll just say that it's really important that you correspond the baits you're trying to fish with the tackle or the setups that you have, because one thing you don't want to do is go out there with the wrong tackle trying to catch these fish and trying to throw these baits.
Right. So what's your typical line size?
I run 20 pound mono across the board. That's it.
It's 20 pound mono.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I know, guys. I used to fish more fluorocarbon for my soft baits to have that bait come in a little bit lower and for better hook sets and stuff. But to be honest, I don't fish soft baits as much anymore. So paying that much for a dang spool of fluorocarbon just kind of turned me off.
Yeah, definitely.
So
that can get expensive.
I just buy this guy once a year. I buy this once a year, and that sets me up for a season of fishing swim baits. So.
All right. So I know you were mentioning like the boating position and stuff like that. So that I'm gonna go ahead and ask, where do you throw it? Not just I'm not gonna say like different kind of structure or whatever, but like where would you throw it? Like deep, shallow, mid? Are you fishing it around different kind of structures, around docks, open water? That's just where would you throw it? Where the guy who just gets his first big swim bait and he's like, all right, man, let's go catch a fish, and he goes out. Where are you sending him?
Well, you'll get a lot of different answers on that question, and some people will probably tell me I'm wrong for saying this, but I would say if you want to figure that bait out, if you really want to learn the ins and out of that bait, tie that bait up, go out there and just throw it everywhere. Yeah. Because especially if you're throwing like a big glide bait or something, you're going to see a lot of fish, and in seeing those fish, you're going to find out where they're living. You're gonna start to determine the moods of these fish, and like I said, after doing it for a while, you'll pick up on these little visual cues that the fish give when they're either getting ready to eat or when they're not gonna eat. So I would say just start fishing all the areas that you're confident in with those baits, and then the most obvious pieces of cover on the lake.
Okay.
So, and the reason why is, so you'll have the most obvious piece of cover on the lake, which every guy goes up to and throws a Senko at and throws a jig at.
Yeah.
So those fish are kind of conditioned to seeing that a couple times a day or more, depending what lake you're at. But so you go and throw that swim bait up there, they're not necessarily used to seeing that every day, but those big fish are on those obvious pieces of cover for a reason, because those are generally the best pieces of cover on the lake. So go up there and throw your swim baits at those. If you don't get any bites, if you don't see any fish, they might not be there. You might not be there on the right time, but just get out there and fish, especially in areas that you know that they're going to be. And all I can say is don't make a couple casts and then put it down.
Right.
Just commit to fishing it for a little while and give it a real chance before putting it down.
Right. Excuse me. All right. So, when's the best time to fish this? And I know that you're fishing this almost year round, but what's the best time? Is it a morning thing, afternoon thing, nighttime, and also like the season? Like.
Okay.
I'm not talking about the experienced guy. I'm talking about the guy who's just picking this up. Like, when should this person go out and start using this? Like, morning.
But that's also going to be subjective to whatever style you're throwing too. For example, if you're throwing a wake bait, which is, a top style lure, yeah. It's traditionally top water, you have a little bit better luck in low light conditions. But that being said, I've had luck in the middle of a hot day with calm conditions and a sun over my head. But I would say for wake baits, definitely, those lower light conditions or, some nastier weather when the water's chopped up. Glide baits, I would say the same thing for lower light and wind chop and all that. But at the same time, the glide bait is special because you have those calm days when you have the sun up overhead. The fish are tending to look up more, or they're going to be suspended up higher in the water column. So when you throw that bait out, they're going to be very willing to show themselves most of the time. So I would say now through the fall is the best time for a swim bait angler to go out there with any style swim bait and throw them just to catch any fish. Not the biggest fish particularly, but this time of year through fall is when you'll catch the most fish on swim baits.
So
in our state and in this area, and that's from my experience. And I'll put that asterisk next to everything I say.
Oh, definitely.
This is all based off of my experience. This isn't rule of thumb. I'm sure some guy in maybe even on the other side of town is probably catching them a different way, but this is all stuff that's worked for me.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
that's what works for you, man. And that's why I'm here asking you. Hey, I've seen the bass you've catch, so I will take you for your word, man. I believe you. So that being said, and I know I keep on bringing the beginner, the first thing. So, what is a pointer that you can give anyone who just wants to get into it? Because I know that it's like almost an obsession. You when you're fishing big swim baits, you're just almost just swimming big swim baits. Like you said, you're going to keep on doing this, and then once you get the fish that you've been waiting for, maybe you'll do something else. But I know guys who spend so much money on these dang swim baits, man. So what's a good pointer for anybody just starting out?
Don't get too locked into fishing glide baits.
Okay, fair enough.
So let me break that down a little bit. So the reason why I say that is because, as I said earlier, you're going to have days where you go out there throwing this glide bait and you're getting a follower, off every dock, off every laydown, every patch of grass, whatever. But these fish are, they're just coming up to the bait and then turning away, or they're just following it really lazy. But if you keep throwing that bait, one of these fish is gonna be fired up, and
right.
Or you'll get that one of those fish close enough to be able to trigger it. So it's kind of this carrot on the end of the stick thing, and you can go out there for days on end thinking that the next time is going to be on, and it just not kind of turn out that way. So don't get locked into fishing one style just because you like it. That's what I've done and I continue to do. And it's not always, I never consider myself the smartest or the best fisherman. The guy who goes behind me and throws a glide bait at this laydown, maybe catches one, but also picks up his jig and throws that in there and catches 5 more fish off of it. He's the smart guy. He's the better angler. I just do what I like to do because I like to catch them how I want to catch them. Yeah. You know, that's it, plain and simple. Yeah. So, sorry, what was the question? Did I answer it there?
Yeah, I was just saying. I was saying any pointers. You know, I said any pointers that you can give to these new guys, and you were saying don't stick to glide baits.
Right. So, well, don't be open-minded to fishing your other stuff too. But you know, when you're going out there and you decide to pick that bait up, give it a chance. Yeah. Give it a chance before you put it back down. But don't get so locked in that that's all you want to fish, because you're going to pass up a lot of bites. And if you're somebody who's going out there to catch fish and not just catch fish on swim baits, then you're going to miss a lot of bites if you don't pick up other baits. I'm already aware of that, and I know I pass up dozens of huge bites every year, if not more, just because I'm locked into fishing a certain way. But like I said, I want to catch them how I want to catch them, and to be honest with you, I still don't feel like I've refined my technique to a point that I'm happy with it. So I'm out there every day. I'm trying to learn something new, and I'm trying to, you know, discover a little piece of these fish's behavior that I haven't discovered yet, and try to make it happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I know a couple of your followers and a couple of your buddies sent you some questions, and we'll get to that. But first of all, I want to know, what's your favorite swim bait, man? I need to know 2 different things. What's your favorite swim bait, and what's your most expensive swim bait? Because I know them things get stupid expensive, man. Or is the wife watching this and we're not allowed to talk about money?
No. So I'm not so much of a collector. You see these guys that fish swim baits and they have like hundreds of baits. Yeah. And you know, that's cool. I get that. But I have an amount of baits that I use every bait that I have, or at least I have intention to use every bait that I have. Most of what I have has a specific purpose, or it's a backup for a bait that is a specific purpose. So, anyways, to answer your question, my favorite bait, hands down, is going to be this guy. This is the glide bait I started with.
Okay, rainbow trout.
That's an 8.5 Hiroshima hardtail.
Woo!
This is one of his older baits. You can't get this bait anymore. He makes a different style now, and it's got a different swim on it. But this bait here, back when I fished the club with you guys, I got my first one, and I started having some success with it, and it snowballed. And from then, man, it just I didn't want to throw anything else. And like I said, I passed up on a lot of good bites, but I learned some cool things. So that I would say is my favorite bait, hands down. I have different glide baits to cover different situations. That one in particular is a summer bait that I use for fishing really erratic. I'll throw it out there. I'll fish it a lot faster than I'm fishing baits in the spring or the fall. And I'll make sure I'm cutting it really hard and making it look like it's a trout that's trying to get away, or a trout that's injured and it's giving off weird little motions as it's dying. So that's definitely my favorite bait, hands down. And that one in particular has probably caught me over 100 fish, probably closer to 200, to be honest with you. Nice. So I've had multiple 20 fish days with that bait. So, yeah, that's my favorite bait. And then let me grab my most expensive. This one's probably my most expensive. It's just the 10-inch soft tail style Hiroshima trout. And this guy, I'm not sure on the exact price of it because I get a little bit of a hookup on it, but I think it's $220, which in the realm of glide baits and big swim baits, so these days isn't completely absurd. So, but it's still more than I'd like to spend, to be honest with you. Like, anytime I have to spend any more than $150 on a swim bait, I'm like, ooh. So,
I feel it. So I'm gonna go through. I know you shot me some text earlier, about some questions you got, and one of them was.
Yeah. One more thing, can I add?
Yeah, you can add anything you want, man. It's your day, man. This is your show.
So to add on to the what to do, I think it's more important that I emphasize what not to do.
Okay, fair enough.
One thing a lot of swim anglers do, or a lot of anglers do that I see when I'm fishing with them, if I take them out fishing on my boat, or just when they explain to me stories about the one that didn't bite or whatever, or how can I make a follower bite. One of the biggest mistakes guys make is they'll get a lazy fish that'll follow it in, and it won't bite, but they'll sit there and they'll cast back at it 2, 3, 4 times. Well, not only is that fish sitting there, wondering about this bait, why it keeps showing up there and splashing in there and why it's so suspicious looking, but it's hearing your motor on your trolling motor. It's hearing the noise your boat's making. So I'm not sure if these fish are as smart as we give them credit for, but I will say that in my experience, it's made a big difference for me that if I get a follower and that fish doesn't seem like it's going to bite right away, or if it misses and blows its shot that first time, I pull that bait away, don't let it see it anymore, and I try to get the boat away from it as fast as I can, and I'll come back. I try to give it as long as I can in between trying to come back for it and try again. So whether, it be 15 minutes or a couple hours or later that day, whatever, but I'll come back and try it at a different angle, a little bit of a different angle, and then when I make that next cast, I try the speed, I pick it up a little bit and make it a little bit more erratic, and I've gotten more success out of doing that than I have out of just throwing back behind a fish. To be honest, I don't know if I've ever caught a bass after throwing back behind it, or back to where I think it's going because it didn't, show me the right behavior, or didn't lash out at the bait the first time. So definitely don't cast back at that fish. I know that there's guys that do it, and you can figure eight a fish when it comes up to the boat and it's really fired up, and you can see it's still there, and you can figure eight fish and do stuff like that, but a lot of the times that's not going to play out like that. Right. So reposition yourself, come back, reposition yourself, and make another good cast at it. Even to build on that, I'll say what not to do is don't get impatient with your casts and your casting angles. If you've got a piece of cover where a fish is on, or you think a fish is on, and it's a good high percentage piece of cover, or you located a fish on it earlier, come back up to that cover as quiet as you can and position yourself the best as you can before you make that cast. Don't get anxious and throw that cast out there before you're ready, and then all of a sudden you go over the end of the dock, or you go over the tip of the laydown, or you're way over here because your cast was so accurate because you had to huck it out there so far. So take the time to make sure your boat positioning is as good as you can get it, and make sure that your angles are as good as you can get them.
Nice.
These bass are always looking for angles to trap their prey and to ambush their prey. They're looking for funneling points and ambush zones. So use that and try to bring that bait into areas where it's going to cause that bass to kind of have that thought where it's like, hey, he's going into this area. I need to get that bait now, or else I'm not going to have a chance at food for,
Right.
And so kind of just stack the deck in your favor, and make sure you've got all the controlled variables you can control. Make sure you've got them in check.
Right on. So, like I was saying, I know some of your followers sent you some questions, and you sent me a couple of them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to go to them here, sorry. And one of them was, who inspired you to throw big baits? Like, how did you get started in doing this?
Well, I remember back when I started back when I started bass fishing, Sam. I was a big salmon and steelhead fisherman before I got into bass fishing.
Yeah.
And I kind of gravitated away from that for various reasons. But I remember seeing these guys on these bass groups, and they had these huge bass, and they had these big lures either stuffed down their mouth, or these big hard baits hanging off the side of their face. I was like, man, that is so cool. I want to do that. there was a few guys in particular. I remember finding a lot of inspiration when I found out about Tag Watson and a lot of the damage he done around here. Oh yeah. So he was a big inspiration. At the time, Clark Corper was doing a lot of damage around here.
Yeah.
So he was an inspiration for me. You know, of course, like the Butch Browns and stuff of the swim bait universe, I guess you could say. But so mostly just that. And then my buddies, you know, as I would catch fish, my buddies would be like, oh, you know, that's cool. Keep on with that. You're doing, you know, nobody else is doing that. And just hype for my buddies and stuff kept me doing it. Yeah. And then obviously the thrill of catching it and all that was a huge, the thrill of catching those fish and seeing the behavior and all that. But so, yeah, that was kind of my inspiration behind it. And since then, it's just been the drive to catch the 10-pound plus and catch it on a swim bait.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's see what else we got here. So, Cody catching football. Go ahead.
Oh, I said hopefully I'm not going in circles here.
No, man, you're all good, man. This is your show, bro. So Cody catching footballs. He said, where do you think that the PNW falls in the U.S. for quality of bass? So I'll repeat the question. Where do you think the PNW falls in the U.S. for quality of bass?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question because most people think Washington and they think it's so far north that, you know, we're going to be somewhere like, you know, New York, Maine, those states where, you know, you see a lot more of those 6-7 pound fish that are kind of the apex predators.
Yeah.
At least for bass. But I would say we're pretty darn lucky where we're at. We've got a very good mix of high population lakes with your average size fish that you can go out there and just wear them out and have fun catching fish. True. And then we've got more lakes in this state than people know that have record class bass in them.
Facts.
Especially on the west side. The west side there's a lot of lakes over here where you can catch. I know of several that have put out 10-pound bass in the past 5 years, ranging from, you know, Snohomish County down to Thurston County, even down. I think I've heard of one down in Cowlitz County.
Silver Lake.
And then there's obviously been some here in Pierce and King County as well.
Yeah.
But so I would say we rank pretty dang high up there.
I would agree.
You know, if you're out there to catch those kind of fish all the time, this might not be the place to go. Right. But I'd say we got to be somewhere in the middle, man.
We have to. I was trying to think. I know that guy just caught the state record, 2 years ago? Last year?
I think it was 4 or 5 now. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Hey, I'm going to tell you right now, and I know everybody blames everything on COVID, but, bro, the last 2 years, COVID just screwed up my whole time frame, man. It's like the last 2 years were just like a freaking blur, man. So, yeah, you're right. I would say 3, maybe 4 years ago. I would say 3 years ago, but yeah, you're right. It
could even be longer because I want to say it was definitely before I caught my 9-pounder, and I want to say it was at least a year or two before that, but don't quote me on that.
Right. The guy caught on a freaking Cinco, man.
Yeah, I know. Hey, don't knock the damn Cinco.
I don't knock it. I don't knock it, man. Every bait has its place. I'm not saying I fish Cincos all the time, but I'm saying I don't knock it. Hey, I always have Cincos in the bag, ready to go.
That's something I won't do, is I don't ever knock conventional fishermen, because like I said, those guys are smarter than me in most cases. So.
All right. So Adrian, man, he good dude too, but good question. And you started talking about it a little bit, but how many times have you had a fish bite your follow-up bait, drawing a fish out of cover?
So that's a good question.
Yeah.
I haven't really experimented with follow-up baits very much, and I know it sounds kind of stupid, but so I would rather catch them on the big swim bait most of the time. So like I said, I'll come back later and try to catch that fish on the swim bait or a different swim bait, but I know it works. I know of a lot of guys who have success following up with jigs or the big Magnum sticks, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So if you're into just catching fish, I would definitely always have a follow-up bait tied on for when you see those followers. Because I do know that some guys catch them, you know, they'll get a follower and then back off and toss that Senko or jerk bait or something dumb, you know, something tiny in there, and
definitely,
and that fish just. But personally, it doesn't work for me. And like I said, personally, trying to follow up with another cast doesn't work for me. It's always repositioning and coming back at a later time.
It's funny that we mentioned followers and Senkos. That's the time I will always have a Senko tied on, is when I'm frog fishing. There's been many times where, you know, I'm popping it, it smacks it, and then the frog flies up in the air. I'll grab that Senko, skip it right exactly where it did, and then it's crazy how many times that the bass comes right back. It's almost like he smacks the frog and then something falls or something. I don't know. But definitely, anytime I'm fishing frogs, I always have a Senko on.
Yeah, it's a good bait, man. And frogs, too. I mean, out of all the conventional tackle that I miss fishing, I would say frogs, jigs, and jerk baits are probably the two that I miss most. And those three techniques are really good techniques to know if you want to get into swim bait fishing as well. But we might touch on that here in a minute, so I'll wait.
All right. So another question from PNW Fishing 24/7. He said, small to big waters, how do you determine what swim bait to use and how big? It's kind of a tough question.
Well, I'm hard-headed, so most of the time I'm going to use the same stuff. But,
big, yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Like I said earlier, you know, I'll go out there and I'll spend some time hitting some key areas with the glide bait and seeing how they're following. But there is times when I'll downsize to smaller glide baits. I have a few that are in the 5 or 6 inch range that I'll mess around with if I'm trying to target a specific really big fish and I know she's really not trying to have that big bait. I'll come back with a smaller bait and try to coerce her with that. But generally speaking, like I said, I'll go out there with a glide bait, and that helps me learn a lot about the lake, just based on the areas that they're following the bait out from, and you'll be able to figure out dead water from that as well. So I hope that answers the question. I'm not sure if it really did.
Yeah, it makes sense. So
let me add to that.
Sure,
so
go ahead.
I'll say if you're not getting a lot of positive reaction and you're throwing a lot of bigger stuff, downsizing is always a good option to try to get those fish to bite. So anybody who's having issues with getting a lot of followers, but they're not wanting to commit, try downsizing, try coming back with a completely different bait. Yeah, so that's it.
Yeah. Another question one of your followers had was from the Washington Painter. He said, if you had one color of glide bait to fish for the rest of your life, what would it be? One color for the rest of your life.
To be honest with you, I've grown on bass patterns a lot in the last 2 years. They've kind of become my favorite to fish. One reason is because a lot of the lakes I fish, they get trout plants, but the trout seem to get picked off, whether it be by the birds or the fishermen or the bass. By the summertime, mid-summertime, you typically aren't seeing many trout swimming around. So what you are seeing is you're seeing a lot of yearling bass and young bass swimming around. And so I started throwing some bass patterns, I think last year or year before, and started having a lot of success with them. And I think a lot of guys, when they pick up a swim bait, especially like your trout profile baits, they're going to go with a trout pattern.
Okay.
So as people have gotten more and more into it over the last few years, I've gravitated more towards patterns that aren't as commonly used, just to kind of try to stand out a little bit. So I would say a bass pattern with a white belly, because typically your fish are going to be looking up at that bait, and all they're going to be seeing is the belly of it at that point anyway. So a white belly, unless you're fishing lower light conditions, then I like to have a darker belly, a darker pattern.
Right. All right, so another one of your followers, one of your buddies, Patrick, he sent a message saying, would you say there is a direct correlation between big baits and conventionals that help in selecting which big to throw? Like a glide bait on conditions you'd throw a jerk bait, or a trash fish on jig structure, etc.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a great question, and I'm really glad he asked that.
Yeah.
So, I personally think it is really important to know kind of the fundamentals of bass fishing first before you go into swim bait fishing, because it's really beneficial to know, bottom fishing and bottom contact with jigs and those style baits for fishing soft baits, especially when you're fishing them low on the bottom. And so you kind of get control of the hook set and stuff and fighting the fish. Now, I would say the same to be said about glide baits and wake baits. Now, glide baits, I would say, if you're experienced at fishing jerk baits and you're really good at fishing jerk baits, then a glide bait will kind of come naturally to you, because it's the same kind. The area that a glide bait's going to shine in is going to be in triggering the bass, exactly like a jerk bait. So it's going to excel in areas where a bait like a wake bait or a soft bait won't, because your soft baits and your wake baits are more linear, meaning those baits are coming in just like this, and you can maybe stop and go with them, but they're kind of just staying on that straight path. And when a bass is out hunting, its prey is not going in a straight line the whole time, especially when it can sense that fish coming up behind it.
Right.
So when you've got a glide bait, it's out there, swimming kind of like this, and then when the fish gets behind it, or whenever you feel the fish is behind it, you give it a rod twitch or some reel turns, and that bait goes boom, 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 and then slides off an extra foot or so on that long glide. When you kill it, or that last twitch, it'll send it off on a longer glide, and typically that's when the fish is going to bite it. So jerkbait fishing is going to come really in handy when it comes to fishing glide baits. I would say anytime you feel like a jerk bait might work, a glide bait could work too, but not always, because it's going to be, bigger. But also spinnerbaits, I like to tell people, whenever you think spinnerbait, a glide bait's going to be a good option to try. So yeah, there's that. And then, your traditional top waters, it's always good to learn hook sets and all that before, but I would say it's not as important as the other two. So I would definitely, if you're somebody who's just getting into bass fishing and looking at trying to get into swimbait fishing as well, I would say definitely try to get a little more experience into those techniques, into some more of the fundamentals of bass before you try and jump in all the way and try to go to something like this. Because I'll admit, even myself, I haven't been I think I've been bass fishing for about a decade now, and 6 years of that now is swim bait only. So there was a good portion that I was still learning when I started fishing swim baits, and I feel like there's a lot more I could still learn if I go back to fishing conventional, which I'm going to someday. Just right now, like I said, I've got the mission for catching that one on my mind. So
definitely,
absolutely, I would say learn your fundamentals with fishing conventional tackle, and it's going to absolutely help you become a better big bait fisherman.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm kind of out of questions. Your followers are out of questions. You got anything you want to add? Actually, you know what? We need to talk about something that people didn't see offline. But I'm a big Seahawks fan. You know I was gonna bring it up, bro. You know I was gonna bring it up.
Oh yeah.
So I'm a big Seahawks fan. He's a Cardinals fan, and man, we always bust each other's chops, man. And whenever we're playing against each other, man, I can expect a text from him, or he can expect a text from me, or whatever. Anyways, that being said, I have this, okay? It's a
That was
skull.
the first thing I saw.
It's the first thing he saw. It's a skull Seahawks helmet, okay? My buddy Ed, my good buddy Ed, brought this back to Mexico, from Mexico, and gave it to me. Well, as soon as we started this we started the video up and everything, he was like, wait a second, what's that? And then I showed him, and then he turned around and showed me. Go ahead. Hey, man, what is the chances? What is the chances, man?
Hey, it's meant to be, man.
It's meant to be, man. What is the chances? I had to bring that up, man.
That's perfect.
I had to bring it up because that was just too funny. So, yeah, man, you got anything else you want to add, man? Sorry, bugging
Yeah,
me.
so I actually wanted to make an announcement. So we're getting ready, me and my buddy Frank and my buddy Pat, we're gonna be launching a new community based out of here in Washington called Swimbait WA, Swimbait WA.
Okay.
And we already started an Instagram page for it. We haven't done a rollout or anything yet. It's got some followers, but we haven't announced it yet. So we will be soon, and I think we're going to be doing a giveaway on that page to kind of launch it off.
Awesome.
And then I believe there's a Facebook page as well. I'm not on Facebook, so I think Frank will be handling the Facebook side of it. But look out for that. You could search it on Instagram right now, Swimbait WA, and you can follow us on there. Look for us to start posting your guys' swimbait catches from Washington real soon. And we're going to go into detail about tips, etiquette, stuff like that. A bunch of stuff that we think would be good knowledge for local guys to know. So yeah, watch out for that. And then also I'm going to be announcing a giveaway here this week. It's going to be a pretty good giveaway. So
awesome. Watch
out for that as well.
Yeah, Frank's a good dude, man. I've been talking with him, and we're going to probably do an interview as well, me and Frank, because I fished against him with Tiny Boat Nation. Those are a bunch of good guys, and Frank's always there, too, and I always sit down and BS with Frank. He's a good dude, man.
Oh, he's a hell of a fisherman, man.
Yeah.
He picks up on stuff that I don't notice, and vice versa. It's really cool to compare thoughts with him because he's got a unique perspective on things, and he sees things differently than I do. So it's always cool to share notes with him and to talk fishing with him. He's a hammer. He's out there just banging on them always. You know, he's one of the best sticks in the state, and I'll fight anybody with that.
Fight me!
So, yeah, man, definitely get him on there. It'll be another good interview, and I think there will be a lot of good information that'll come out of that.
Definitely. Man, I appreciate you taking the time and doing this, man. I know we've been talking back and forth when we were going to do this, and I'm glad we finally, pulled the trigger and did it, man. This is awesome. I had a great time.
Yeah, me too, man. I thank you for the opportunity to sit here and blab my fat mouth about fishing. And I appreciate anybody who wants to listen, and like I said earlier, none of this stuff is like concrete, factual stuff. This is all based on my experience, based on what I've seen and what I've done and what I continue to do time and time again out on the water. There's stuff I forgot to mention, so maybe we can have another sit down and talk about it another time.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
Yeah, I look forward to that, man.
All right, y'all. That guy Skimpy. We got I forgot how I did it earlier. The big bait bassin beast Brent. That's him. Brent Davis, man. 253 caster, man. I appreciate you, man.
I'm just a guy that throws swim baits a lot, and that's it.
All right.